I've got a submission here from Gyro001, who is your first tune. You used my tuning thread. Yay! Hope that was helpful. I always say that. And you think D is too high on all X's, but maybe P has to go up, but maybe there's a bit of D noise. So my advice to anybody, especially if you're running one of the later versions of Betaflight, 2.4, 2.5, if you're at all concerned about the D term being too noisy, just drop it to a very low value and tune as good as you can with P. And once you feel like you have P exactly where it needs to be, then maybe start working D up a little bit. But you may be surprised at just how good of a tune you can get with very little D term on the latest versions of Betaflight. And I don't know if that has to do with something he did with the filtering or something that Boris did, with a higher gyrosync sampling rate frequencies, 2 kilohertz, 4 kilohertz, 8 kilohertz. I don't know what it is, but on the latest versions, I barely need it. My D gain is in the range of 5 to 8, and I feel like it flies great, and it doesn't feel like it needs any more. So if you're at all concerned, don't be afraid to drop D down. This is not like the old days when the P term was so hard to find the right balance of P and D to get rid of things like bounce back at the end of flips and rolls, and you had to really work to get the D and the P right to make that go away. You can get a very, very good tune these days with very little D and a lot of P. Well, don't go overboard on the P, but mostly P and not a lot of D. So let's have a look at your log and see what we see. And just as a formality, I check your gyro traces, I zoom out to 10%, and they are very thin and very clean, and we'll just move right past that. Let's take a look at your roll axis first, as I usually do. So here we've got some high frequency noise in the D term. These sharp squiggles here are high frequency noise. It is interesting that it kind of goes away at some throttle position. See, here we don't see the high frequency noise. Here we do. We've got these sharp squiggles. None of that is inherently a problem. It just is. But I thought I'd point it out. When I talk about high frequency noise, this is what I'm talking about. These sharp squiggles here compared to these smooth lines here where it's going up and down. There's no high frequency noise here. I agree that your D term is a little overactive. Notice that the D term is larger in magnitude than the P term in many places, and small movements in the P term produce large movements in the D term. That's probably not ideal, and it's probably making a little bit of noise in your motors. We've also got a lot of oscillations here at high throttle. See, what the P term is doing here, we could call that surging. It's sort of working, but it's not like oscillating. But then we get over here. Do you see how the P term has very regular frequency and almost looks like a sine wave here, up and down? That's, I think, I don't like that. And I feel like what's probably happening here is that the D term is getting hyperactive and it's causing the P term to oscillate. And I think that because I see a lot of D term activity throughout the file, so it feels like your D gain is too high. The P term looks generally pretty well behaved. I don't see a lot of sharp P term oscillations. Let's look at a full throttle situation. Yeah, see the P term here is moving up and down, but I don't see any sinusoidal oscillations that would tell me the P term was too high. So yeah, I agree that you should drop your D gain down. Your D gain is right here. Your D gain is at rewrite, and your D gain on roll is 27. Yikes. Yeah, no, wait, take that way down. Take that to like 15. I'm surprised it's that high. That's on rewrite for sure. Wow, that is something. 27. Yeah, take that way down. Oh, yeah, see now here, what the heck is going on here? Let's play that back in real time and see what's up. So that might be just a little prop wash oscillation. But that kind of high frequency oscillation like that, that's really, you don't want that. And that's almost always the D term. So definitely drop your D term down. It looks like it's not always flipping out, but sometimes it's flipping out under certain conditions. And we never want to see this. This we never want to see. See how there's all these sharp up and down zigzags? That's the D term being, the D gain being too high. Take your D gain way down on roll. Leave P alone, though. I feel like P is pretty close to where it needs to be. Again, right here. Right here. This, to me, it doesn't look like P-term oscillation because P-term oscillation is usually a constant magnitude, up and down, up and down. Here we can see the P-term well, I'm not sure what right terminology you use for it. The P term is definitely moving up and down quickly, but it's not sort of sinusoidal and regular. And the D term is much greater in magnitude than the P term. This feels to me like the D gain is too high and it's pulling the P term around. This is not characteristic of what high P gain looks like. Excess P gain oscillations are sort of more sinusoidal and regular and tend to be equal in magnitude above and below the axis. Whereas here we've got these oscillations and they're kind of regular in frequency, but they're not equal in magnitude above and below the axis. And that feels to me like the D gain is too high. Yeah. Okay, so now let's look at pitch. We'll again go back to the full throttle scenario. Again, so yeah, so here we probably have more prop wash. Let's watch it and find out. Maybe you just jam the throttle a little. Yeah, it's prop wash and you're jamming the throttle. Again, you would almost not notice this if you weren't looking at Blackbox, but to me, this is one of those things that you see in Blackbox that says something isn't quite right. And even if you, this is why tuning line of sight, no matter how good your tune is line of sight, you're missing some insight if you don't have Blackbox. And maybe it doesn't matter. But this kind of thing, you would hardly notice line of sight. And yet I feel like this is a clear indication, again, that D gain is too high. D term is very active. We see these little twitches here. These little twitches right here and here. Now, yeah. Again, here, this is no good. This is no good. I don't like this at all. D gain is too high. If we look at the times when the D gain is not, or the D term is not flipping out, the P term looks pretty good and maybe even could be a little higher on the P gain, but it's hard to judge because of the way the D term is pulling it around. So again, drop your, yeah, oof, right here. This is a classic example of the D gain being too high and it's making the P term really just kind of go crazy. This is not what P-term oscillations look like. For one thing, P-gain oscillations don't tend to happen for a long time. They don't tend to just keep happening. They tend to sort of crest and die. Yeah. Whereas here we can see this is just happening and happening and happening and happening and happening. And that's more consistent with the D-gain being too high. So if we look at your command line dump, on the pitch axis, D is 30. Yeah, drop that way down. Drop them both to like 10 or 15 at most. And then check your P. Your pitch P is surprisingly high, although your actual trace doesn't look out of line. But I'm surprised that you're flying with 7.2. That's high. I would be surprised if you didn't have oscillations. Maybe there's some interaction going on with the D term. Yeah, look at this. This is so messy. Your instinct that this D term was too messy, it was exactly correct. It's really too messy. Drop that way down. Let's look at yaw. So we still see the high frequency noise on the yaw axis in the D term. But I don't see any problematic, like, super flip outs. This isn't great, but it's maybe not too big a deal. The thing is, on yaw, you hardly need any D gain, or D gain at all to get good performance. So there's not really any reason to try and push the limits of D with yaw. So leave it alone if you want, but it could probably stand to come down a little bit too. Your P gain on yaw could probably come up. I don't really see any spiking at all. No surging, no spiking. It's just really docile. The line is really smooth, docile. And so that suggests to me the P gain could stand to come up. Let's look at your high throttle and see what's happening. See, even at high throttle, there's not a lot going on here. The P term is not. So probably knock D on yaw down a notch or two. and bring P up. On yaw, you're at 6.7. Yeah, see, so for yaw, that's a little low. I think for rewrite, a typical yaw number might be between, say, 8 and 11. Again, that's just a very rough number for a wide variety of things, but and D could probably come down maybe to 20, just a little. All right. So that's what I got. If your tune were more refined and we were more sure you were close to the right numbers, then we could start thinking about filtering for the D term to try and get rid of some of this high frequency noise if we felt that that was something we wanted to explore. But again, if the copter's flying good, then who cares, right? But for now, I feel like you're right that the D gains are not where they need to be, and they need to come down, and just double check that the P gains are correct. Your P gains are pretty close, I think, except on yaw. I think your yaw is pretty, I mean, it's, you know, say it's far off. Well, it's not that far off, right? But I feel like you're like within a few tenths of where you need to be on P. So your P might go up by 0.3 or down by 0.3 at the most. But yaw, I think, could come up like by 2 or 3 on your P. And then your D's can come down, and just leave the D's down if it flies good. Don't there's no need to have it if you don't need it for flight. Hope that's helpful. Good job on the tune. Good job on the tune. This is really, you know, we're sort of nitpicking some nuances here, but your instincts are exactly right, and I feel like if this were my copter, I would be pretty happy with where I was at, and I would be pretty close to having it really where I wanted it to be. So good job. Happy flying.